Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. Back with some more vibes for you. Yes, I'm Mr. Giant. Mr. Giant coming at you. And this one is the Haitian Revolution, the long fuse, extra history. This is the second installment in the Haitian Revolution. I think there's like five or six. We're going to watch them. Yes, you know what I mean? And like I said in the first installment, this is something I know a little bit about because I'm from the Caribbean down that way. So we learn about the Haitian Revolution prominently in our schools. You know what I mean? But I ain't going to keep you all on too long. Let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer.
Paris, August 26, 1789.
Let's see
The
it.
Revolutionary National Assembly in France takes the vote. At issue is a new document, drafted by Marquis de Lafayette in consultation with his friend Thomas Jefferson. But in truth, many statesmen have given input to this Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen. It borrows from the Magna Carta, the American Declaration of Independence, and both the English and American Bill of Rights. It begins. Article 1. Men are born and remain free and in equal rights. Social distinctions can be founded only on the common good. Though they do not know it, these words will light a fuse that will burn all the way across the Atlantic and blow the slave society of Saint-Domingue to smithereens.
Yeah.
Like the American Revolution, slavery was always lurking under the table in revolutionary France. It did not go unnoticed that the revolution's rallying cry of liberty, equality, and fraternity was directly at odds with slave-owning society. But there were also no illusions about the French dependency on the sugar economy of Saint-Domingue. And though abolition was discussed from the mid-1700s, even the most radical favored a gradual emancipation, with slave owners being paid compensation. Many warned that if nothing changed, a major Caribbean slave revolt was inevitable. Then when the revolution came, representatives from the big whites, the Saint-Domingue plantation owners, and the free people of color both decided that the time had come to take their goals to Paris. The big whites pushed for the colonies to have seats in the newly created National Assembly, so they could argue for more autonomy in the colonies' affairs, and for the freedom to trade with the British Caribbean and the United States. And the free people of color, for their part, were well ahead of them. For years, representatives from Saint-Domingue had been petitioning the government to grant the free people of color full rights, and they too saw the revolution as an opportunity to further that goal. Originally, they had tried to get the big whites on their side, arguing that as fellow slaveholders, the two groups had interests in common. So give the free people of color rights, especially voting rights, and then the two groups together could form a political bloc to defend slavery. The big whites, though, weren't having it. They opposed any reform to the colony's racial caste system. So instead, the free people of color made an alliance with an abolitionist society called the Friends of the Blacks. And they argued that granting full rights to free people of color would be a major step on the road to gradual abolition. And here's
So you see that's just messed up. They weren't trying to get abolition because they think everybody should be free. They want to get it so that they could have the freedom to have power to terrorize those same people that they acting as if they want to abolish slavery for. Money is a hell of a thing, man. Money will make you do anything, even to your own people, huh? It's like I was watching something here recently about the British crusade against slavery, and I kind of looked a little dumbfounded in the video. It's not because I haven't heard of it, but it's the argument being used to justify something to a certain extent, not completely. But anyway, let's keep going with this here. Let's see what's going on with the Haitian Revolution.
where I'd like to pause for just a second, because this is the last time in this series where things will be relatively simple. Yeah, all of that stuff before was the simple part. Right after this point, both Saint-Domingue and France are going to use a technical historical term, go nuts. Everyone is going to ally with everyone else, and then change sides 15 minutes later. Legislatures are going to vote for reforms, dispatch messengers, dissolve, reform, and then reverse those reforms before the initial messengers even arrive. Revolutionary politics, in other words, is about to resemble a bag full of cats on espresso. In fact, to even fit all of it into this series, we're going to have to gloss over the specifics of French revolutionary politics. Who's in, who's out, who's making policy, unless it has direct impact on Saint-Domingue. And we're also going to have to focus on important trends rather than the specifics of who's allied with whom. And here's our first big trend. white colonials utterly refusing to implement moderate reforms. Both the big and small whites were so committed not just to the structure, but the principle of their racist status quo, that even a proposal like rights for free people of color, which affected roughly 5% of colonial society and essentially had no impact on them, was unacceptable. The second big trend to remember is the ideological flexibility of the free people of color, their ability to court different power blocks, and their sense that they had little in common with the enslaved. Both these dynamics are going to come up again and again. The Declaration of the Rights of Man was almost perfectly calculated to tear Saint-Domingue apart. Depending on how you read it, it could be used to either argue full rights for the people of color as well as the abolition of slavery, or you could claim, as the white colonials did, that it didn't mention slavery at all. But the big whites knew how explosive this was. They sent word back to the colony to prevent word from spreading. It didn't work. Revolutionary politics was all anyone talked about at the dinner table. Meanwhile, the enslaved people, holding the trays and pouring the wine, started to understand that cracks were forming in the system of oppression that bound them.
Yeah, like
In 1790, Vincent Auger.
that's usually the downfall of rich ruling class. They assume that the poor people aren't smart enough to take up arms or rebel against them. You know what I mean? Especially if that society, that ruling class, have hoarded all the military power and all the money, and they think, well, they're helpless. What they gonna do down there, you know? But people get aggravated to the point where they'll use anything as a weapon. They don't really care, you know, as long as you're gone. And usually their will to fight is more something coming from the soul than just money or possessions and stuff. It's easy to go, okay, they come in. You could just leave your possessions and run, you know, but you can't run from your soul. You know what I mean? Hence the reason why they keep them separated. Because one soul could change everything. And I'm talking about like the people coming together and understanding. But you know, that's the thing. You know, after a while, people just won't be able to take it anymore. So the legacy you think you're leaving, that your kids are going to be rich and they're going to be okay for a long time, centuries to come, it may happen, but at some point, your grandchildren, you know, your great great grandchildren, your great 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 grandchildren is going to be having to put up with this stuff that you instituted.
One of the free people of color's strongest advocates, returned to Saint-Domingue, determined to cast a ballot in the new colonial elections. He believed that a piece of legislation passed earlier that year, giving all property owners a vote, made his case clear. He was a full citizen. When the governor refused, Auger sourced arms and staged an uprising. Now, the free people of color had long been the backbone of the colonial militia, an arduous and expensive duty many whites avoided. Some had even fought in the American Revolution, so drawing on this experience, Auger's force initially routed the local militias. But their success was short-lived. He only had 300 men, and a counterattack by regular troops sent him fleeing across the border into Spanish Santo Domingo. He was extradited, tried, and broken on the wheel. But Auger's example inspired other revolts, not just among free people of color, but also isolated slave uprisings. The big whites refused to compromise, even though the rebels were not even demanding full emancipation. They wanted their leaders freed, an extra day off per week, and the abolition of whipping. Meanwhile, in France, Auger's death provided the Friends of the Blacks with new ammunition in the National Assembly. Here was a true revolutionary, martyred in pursuit of the vote. As the political winds shifted, the big whites still refused to make concessions, even forcing the assembly to refer to the enslaved using the euphemism unfree persons. These hardline tactics backfired. Support for the free people of color, even emancipation, was increasingly held up as a test of a member's revolutionary ideals. And on May 15th, the National Assembly declared that
It's funny how throughout history we have to have people doing this to find some kind of freedom and stuff. You know what I mean? And it went from different races to a heightened awareness of the LGBT community, and you know, just different segments. You know, some people say, no, you're wrong, you can't be, and you know, we can't allow you, that you're gonna poison the society and all that. You know, people gonna be people. You know what I mean? Yeah, just because one person is one way doesn't mean he's gonna sway anybody to be his way, because people want to be people. You know, they're going to believe what they're going to believe, and their coded beliefs is sometimes really hard to switch unless something traumatic happens to change the way they think about things. That was a mouthful.
Free men of color, born to free parents, could both vote and be seated in assemblies. The big whites responded by going home and starting their own revolt. In June, big and small whites organized militias, and by July, they were seizing power centers, coming into violent conflict with government authorities, and organizing all-white assemblies that
Kind of
issued
sounds
decrees
familiar.
that all but declared themselves independent. They essentially decided that if they were to preserve white supremacy, they must govern themselves. That summer, the colonial whites fought government forces, and then they fought militias formed by the free people of color, who were furious about the all-white assemblies. Then, the colonial whites, along with government troops, engaged scattered slave uprisings. And in all of that internecine conflict, they were unable to see what was coming, because the long fuse of revolution was about to hit the powder keg.
Yeah.
Now, one issue with studying the Haitian Revolution is that the enslaved, the faction that would eventually win, were largely illiterate and left few records. So, piecing together the specifics of the uprising, particularly its clandestine origins, takes a bit of detective work. What we do know is there had to have been months, if not years, of preparation. Likely those enslaved in houses, largely born in the colony and French-speaking, overheard conversations about the revolution and carried the news to others. Enslaved drivers and overseers, those with leadership roles, started organizing squads. In fact, the predominance of carriage drivers in revolutionary leadership suggests that they performed a major communication and intelligence role, passing messages between plantations. Then, the night came. August 14th, 1791. Duddy Bookman, voodoo priest, carriage driver, and rebel leader, holds a meeting at night on an open plain. Fires burn bright. A tropical storm rages in the distance.
See, right there's the reason why they are demonized when countries take over other countries or enslave other populations. The first thing they do is they take away the religion, because religion has some kind of a mythical power to make people want to revolt. Like they kept their voodoo, and voodoo had a major. I was reading something a couple of years ago that voodoo had a major part to play in the Haitian Revolution as far as them worshiping the gods and stuff. Who was it? Baron Somidi, I think is one of them. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the bottom down there. But they know the power of religion and how religion could spawn people to think that way, especially when the main person in the religion is a poor man who was persecuted by rich people to begin with. You know what I mean? Am I making sense here, people?
A good omen. Religious ceremonies like this are permitted on most plantations and considered a healthy release valve, keeping insurrection at bay. Ironically, however, this summer, the enslaved have done the exact opposite, using the unsupervised gatherings to plan an uprising. And voodoo is the perfect medium of exchange, containing elements of various West African religions. It's one of the few cultural overlaps that the enslaved have, no matter where they were captured. But this meeting is an emergency. A cell has triggered the uprising early, and upon capture, confessed everything. The plantation owners, thankfully, had not believed that the enslaved could organize on the level their captives described. According to tradition, Bookman and several priestesses extracted oaths and drank animal blood to seal a pact with the goddess of love. They swear to free themselves and free the land. Then, they take up their cane knives and steady their souls. Special thanks to our educational tier.
Yeah, see, I'm excited for the next part of this. I'm excited for the next part of this. I want to see when they're going to get to Toussaint and Devalier, I think is his name. Get to those two guys and thing. But anyway, thank you all for watching this with me and thing. Mr. Giant is bringing it all to you guys and thing. Hope you guys are enjoying that. Don't stop watching. Click in the bottom there and keep binging. Keep watching that bad boy, you know what I mean? In the meantime, while you guys are still chilling out watching these videos, the link for this one is going in the description, so you could go check it out yourself without me talking. While you're doing that, take care of each other, alright? Cool runnings.